You mentioned once that we can get clarity about our life. So, to Christians, what would you say is clarity, and how do we get that clarity about our life?
Okay. Um, Clarity is when you know what to do at a particular time. Bible says that sort of people had understanding of times and seasons, and they knew what they ought to do. So the way I see clarity is more of you being able to know what you ought to do at a particular time. You being able to know what you ought to do about your life. Very important. Because a lot of people just go with the motions of life and they don't understand that they are meant to live with a purpose. They are meant to live with an understanding of what they have been sent to do. Jesus Christ knew, and that's why when they wanted to make him a king, right, he didn't allow them to. A king was one of the highest, seat of authority in time past, but Jesus Christ knew his calling, that he was not called to be an earthly king, but an eternal one. And so he refused that at that point. So if people don't know what they ought to be, if people don't understand why God has created them, it's very likely that they become or they are made into what they ought not to be. And actually, things in life want to make us. Systems of the world wants to make us. Our educational certificate wants to make us. The kind of job that we take wants attempts to make us into a certain kind of individual. And most times, if we allow ourselves to be programmed by the circumstances and things that are around us, it's likely that we miss out from eternal purpose. But God Himself, Jesus told the disciples, He told Peter, He said, "I'll come after me and I will make you fishers of men." So we should be more concerned about allowing God to make us into that idea, into that person that said, before you were formed, your mother's womb, I called you, I knew you, and I ordained you as a prophet unto nations. So clarity is knowing our ordination by God before the foundations of the earth, and also being able to know the specific steps in order to that we need to do in order to actualize and become everything that God has made us to be. So to answer the question also on clarity, how to get clarity, one of the things we need to understand also is that God speaks to us, and also He speaks to us literally, like when you hear His voice, when the scripture jumps at us, and in several ways He speaks to us through visions and all. And that way God also speaks to us is through our environment, through the things that happen around us. Let me give you an example. If you look at um, David, for example, David was a man that, or he was a young man that was raised up to be a shepherd boy. He kept his father's sheep and asses. And then a lion came around him and then he defeated the lion. So those little things that happened around him gave him an understanding that, oh, so I'm meant to deliver sheep from being destroyed, from being attacked by predators. And so when he saw Goliath, instantly his brain just clicked that, wait, this thing has happened before. I know that I'm meant to do this. Goliath shall be as one of them because of his blaspheming the name of God. And that was the key. He was able to see and understand through the experiences he had encountered, and he was able to link and relate them with his purpose and what he ought to do at that point in time. So more often than not, God Himself allows situations around us in order to awaken our senses, in order to stir up something within us that He has placed, so that we can perform that purpose. If you look at Esther too, Esther didn't hear a voice from God that, oh, you need to save Jews, right? But due to a word that she heard from Mordecai, that charged her up, that stirred up something that was already innate within her. Because the truth is that sometimes you see people do this, do that. They don't, because there's nothing in them that is responding to that, right? So God can also speak to us like he did to Jeremiah and said, I have made you a prophet unto nations. I've called you to root down, to throw down, to destroy, to build, and to plant. And so those are very, very explicit cases. So God can speak to you and tell you that this is what you ought to do. And also, we should also be sensitive to the things that happen around us, to the things that God allows, because the Bible says that all things work together for good. And that's one thing as a believer we must know, because all things work together for good to them that love God, and number two, are the called according to his purpose. So all things, the good, the bad, the ugly, they work together for good. They work together in training us, in giving us a perspective of that which God himself wants us to do at that point in time.
Thank you.